Krásný den, moc vás vítám v podcastu Čistá mysl v této nové epizodě, ze které mám obrovskou, ale obrovskou radost. Řeknu hned proč. Je to také epizoda, která je v angličtině, první anglická epizoda tohoto podcastu a jedná se o rozhovor s Tang. Pokud se takhle její příjmení vyslovuje správně, to jsem nikdy nezjistil. Je to moje aktuální učitelka meditace. Lian bydlí v Austrálii, takže to byl rozhovor přes planety, by se dalo říct. A já jsem se neskutečně těšil, až ho budu moct zprostředkovat, protože už od minulého roku, někdy na podzim, procházím skupinovým mentoringem od Lian, kde vlastně ve skupině několika lidí jsme dlouhodobě pod jejím vedením z hlediska prohlubování meditační praxe a všímavosti. A tahle cesta byla obrovsky objevná pro mě. Myslím, že jsem se během této doby, teď to bude takových 8 měsíců asi, od té doby, co jsem se takhle vydal na cestu s Lian, tak jsem se za tu dobu naučil o meditaci a o sobě a o své mysli nejspíše mnohem více než za několik předchozích let. A Lian je naprosto úžasná, to, jak jednoduše dokáže předat složité koncepty a jak dokáže vždycky zaměřit na tu esenci věci, na to, co je doopravdy podstatné a na co se člověk má zaměřit, aby dosáhl reálného pokroku, reálné proměny, tak to je neuvěřitelný, to je fakt neuvěřitelný. A tak jsem si říkal, že by bylo super jednou s ní udělat rozhovor a zprostředkovat ho takhle vám do podcastu Čistá mysl. Ten rozhovor proběhl nejprve ve skupině Cesta čisté mysli, soukromá skupina, kde se zaměřujeme vždycky na určité téma měsíce. A teď v červnu v rámci tématu Nejsme naší myslí právě proběhl tento rozhovor a nyní ho dávám i do podcastu. No a o čem se bavíme? Noříme se tam do světa vnitřní práce a sebepoznání a praktických přínosů meditace a všímavosti pro náš každodenní život. Bavíme se o tom, z čeho vůbec Lian vychází, jaké jsou její zkušenosti a jak se učila od různých meditačních mistrů po celém světě. Díváme se na to, co je to vlastně doopravdy meditace a jak ji prolnout s každodenním životem, aby z ní bylo něco vysoce praktického. Povídáme si poté detailně o tom, jak se liší koncentrace a všímavost. Takové dva hlavní aspekty nebo způsoby vnímání reality, které skrze meditaci rozvíjíme, a bavíme se o tom, jak spolu souvisí a jak na ně, jak se v nich zlepšit a co nám to přinese. Bavíme se také o benefitech meditace v našem životě a jak poznat, jestli jdeme správným směrem. Někdy to může být na té cestě meditace takové nejasné, jako jestli nám to doopravdy něco přináší, jestli něco neděláme špatně, tak i na to se díváme. Jaký je takový jednoduchý ukazatel, že na to jdeme správně. Povídáme si o tom, jak nám meditace pomáhá získávat moudrost a podnikat vědomé kroky ve svém životě. Také jsme se podívali na téma obrovské důležitosti motivace a odhodlání. No a v závěru tak jsme se bavili o probuzení, o osvícení. Jaké jsou podle tradice, ze které vychází Lian, 4 fáze osvícení nebo 4 fáze probuzení, jak se od sebe liší. Přišlo mi to neskutečně fascinující a také se celou dobu tak nějak tématem prolíná téma laskavosti, lásky, o tom, jak přistupovat soucitněji k sobě i druhým, k celému světu a celkově, jak se na této cestě životem cítit lépe, obzvláště s pomocí meditace a všímavosti. Tak mám velkou radost tohoto rozhovoru a doufám, že vám přinese nějaké nové vhledy, obohacení, že vás možná inspiruje k tomu, buď zavést meditační praxi do svého každodenního života, pokud ji ještě nepraktikujete, anebo ji zpravidelnit, prohloubit, vydat se ještě dále, protože to ovoce, které tam čeká na sklizení, je velmi šťavnaté. Tak vám přeji nádherný obohacující poslech a jdeme do rozhovoru s Tang přes planety. All right, let's start this interview. Hi, Lian, and thank you so much for accepting the invitation. I was really looking forward to this. Yeah.
Happy to be here. Really enjoy. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. And we're going to be covering some amazing topics regarding meditation, mindfulness in daily life, and really practical stuff on how to improve the quality of our life. This stream is for my Czech community, which could be translated to English as the path of clear mind, I guess, and also for the podcast, which has the same name. So people that are going to be listening are not new to this stuff, so we can maybe even delve a bit deeper if you wish so. And to start off, I just want to say that I really appreciate being in touch with you. I came across you last year, and I hopped into your mentoring meditation group, which has been amazing. Like, I've probably learned more about meditation and the practice of mindfulness. Like, I've learned more than in the past several years of my own practice. So yeah, thank you very much for that. And I just wanted to recommend your program to anyone who's thinking about maybe going a bit deeper and really dedicating his time to this path. So yeah, that's just to start off. Do you think you could give us a little introduction, tell a bit about yourself, and maybe provide a backstory of how you came across this thing of meditation?
Ooh, that's very open-ended. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I came across it. Basically, I had this idea. I came across this idea that there was this person in India who was made it a life mission to understand suffering and the causes of suffering, and more importantly, the end of suffering. And it corresponded with my own personal life mission. I had a pretty challenging childhood, and so there was no doubt that there was suffering in me and the people around me. And I had this bee in my bonnet to think this idea that there is a way out. And so when I came across these teachings, fortunately, when I was really quite young in my, I don't know, when I was 7, 8, 9, 10 type ages, it sort of resonated entirely with me. But not only just the ideas, it was just the people. So I come across it in Buddhist monasteries. I was in Singapore at the time. That's where I grew up. And I came across in this particular Buddhist monastery, and they had the nicest, kindest, wisest people that I'd encountered in my life. People who are very different from other people that I'd encountered. And so I thought there's something to it. And so that just remained within me. I only started the practice of meditation in my late teens, tried doing it on myself, really unsuccessfully, tried to learn from a book, and did all the typical things wrong. I tried too hard, I focused too hard, I crunched up my forehead, and I gave myself a headache, and all those things, which is really very, very common for many people. And it was only later on, in my 20s and 30s, in my 30s, I really, really got seriously into it. My 20s, I was doing a PhD. I was doing a lot of yoga. So I was doing the meditation through yoga, but then my yoga teachers seemed to have I seemed to hit a plateau with regards to meditation and yoga. They could teach me the asanas, but I was more interested in the meditation part, the reason why you're doing the asanas. But my yoga teachers weren't able to sort of help me progress that much further. And that's when I turned back towards the Buddhist teachings and really scoured the earth to sit under meditation masters, any great masters I could come across. I would go make it a point to go sit at their feet and learn from them.
Wow, and how did you find them? I'm always curious. There's in the past I've always felt this urge to find a teacher and learn more about meditation, but I never kind of knew how to do that, and so I just stayed in the Czech Republic and learned on my own. How did that happen?
Bear in mind, I don't live in Europe. I live in Australia, and I come from Asia, so I have a lot of contacts in Asia, and of course it's a way of life in Asia. And so ask the right people and you'll come across a whole bunch of names. And then I started reading things from Western teachers, and I lived in California at one point, in England another point. And so I was living in different areas as well. So I'd ask people there. And so I basically had Asia covered, America covered, and Europe covered. And so that was where most of the teachers were. And Australia, of course, I live in Western Australia. I live in this place called Fremantle in Western Australia. It's not very far from where Ajahn Brahm's monastery is. And so there are a lot of very serious meditators in Perth as well. Yeah, so it was not difficult to find
that's
people
amazing.
here.
That's amazing. And so how did that go? So you started learning with these masters, and how did that journey? What did it look like?
It started off as a general sort of a Goenka retreat, which I remember the first time I sat a Goenka retreat, I just thought, I've been doing this all my life. This whole notion, it was not new. I knew that it wasn't new. I had a car accident in my 20s, and I was in a lot of pain for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And basically I learned a way of not suffering from that pain. And basically it was very much what this meditation path was. The difference between pain and suffering is the addition of the resistance, the internal resistance. So even though there might be pain, if I don't have that resistance, that pain is tolerable. The same amount of pain with any amount of resistance makes it really suffering, a lot of suffering. And so I seem to have learnt that way of doing things in my 20s during this car accident. And so when I started doing the Goenka method, it was fantastic. I think I sat 3 or 4 retreats, and a lot of personal insights. I remember on my second retreat coming home and saying, well, I think that was 7 years of therapy. So there were a lot of personal insights, which was very, very valuable. But then because it came, those retreats, even though well taught, don't have a senior teacher guiding one personally. Again, I reached my limit in terms of how much the assistant teachers were able to guide, because my experiences were beyond what they knew what to say for me to do. And so that's when I started looking further afield and stumbled across the Mahasi system. Mm-hmm. And the Mahasi system and found fantastic teachers. And so stayed with that system and progressed along the path along that system, and then after that discovered, and then hit another plateau where, at which time I found Sayadaw U Tejaniya, who taught me about really watching out for the mind states of greed, hatred, and aversion, and delusion, and being able to learn to work with that, and that helped me take my practice to the next level. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, I did a lot of jhanas with Ajahn Brahm, with the Baok teachers, as well as Chuladasa. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Tibetan stuff, and Japanese Zen, and Korean Zen, and Vietnamese Zen.
You had to taste the whole dish, didn't you?
Absolutely. I mean, a little bit obsessive personality, if I set my mind onto something, my mind just keeps wanting to go back until it gets what it feels it needs.
And do you think that this aspect of your personality has helped you in, reaching higher states of understanding? Was it beneficial?
I think it's been beneficial, and it's been a hindrance. It's caused a lot of suffering. Mm-hmm. That obsession has caused suffering, but the tenacity has meant that I've succeeded.
Yeah, right.
It's meant that obsession where I kind of felt like I needed to, that needed to be let go of. And what was left was just the fact that I knew I needed to, but there wasn't an egoic strive to doing it.
Yeah, that's a big difference, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's been good and bad. And I usually say that to my students too. And of course, most of the students who are attracted to the way I run things do have that tendency. They tend to be very high achievers. They tend to be very capable and successful in other ways. And it's using exactly that strength that can also be a weakness. Don't let the weakness, don't let that turn into a weakness. Use it as a strength.
Yeah, I know something about that because I came across you, through the Culadas's book, The Mind Illuminated. And it's for people that don't know it. I've been showing it many times here, but anyways, it's like a full path of meditation kind of path, separated into steps. So you exactly know what you're doing, where you're at, etc. But it also led to a lot of striving for me in terms of trying to achieve the next level and pushing too hard and being frustrated when it's not working out. So I definitely understand what you mean.
But it's a lot of, and a lot of students encounter that. It's almost like starting to learn high school physics and thinking, yes, I can do the mathematics involved in quantum mechanics. There's like, no chance. You're not there yet. Don't keep trying. You will get frustrated. If you just continue going and you have the aptitude and at the right time, then the next bits open out. So unfortunately, because it's in the form of a book and you can still read the next page, next chapters, you kind of think, oh, surely I'm there.
Yeah, but sometimes it kind of helps me have more motivation to keep going forward when I reading the following chapters and knowing what's ahead, being like, oh wow, this is possible, really. But it just can't turn into striving. Yeah, that's for sure. And that's what I really appreciate about your guidance, actually. Just like, you don't provide much information or you don't give too many techniques. You just pinpoint exactly the thing that we should focus on right now and not think about anything else. And that's really helpful because it simplifies the process and it doesn't allow the mind to want to try everything. It's like, nah, Leon told me, let's practice this, so let's practice it.
Yeah. And it really, I mean, the thing is, it's not that I'm withholding information. The information's out there. It's there for everyone. The problem is there's too much information. And so we need to know where we're at right now. And so what I tend to do is I kind of get a sense of where a student is at that moment. And I say, okay, try this. And I'll give 1 or 2 steps afterwards. But of course, all my students have access to me regularly anyway for ongoing feedback. So when your practice has shifted, that's when I'll say, okay, now try this. So you've actually moved, but I'm not giving that stroke of the ego saying, oh, well done for you to get all
no, you never do.
Great
you
about
never
yourself
do.
And go that. I try to be just encouraging always.
You always talk about things like they're so simple and ordinary kind of, but in a good way. It's great. Yeah. Thank you for that. It's amazing. And it really helps to kind of get a sense of where I'm at on the path, thanks to, the feedback, because otherwise the mind want to believe that it's further on the path or, it can get stuck somewhere for too long. So this really helps. Yeah.
I mean, without going into the specifics of your recent messages with me, it's not about, so the mind can very easily, you experience a new state. And the mind can easily say, that's it, and cling on to the idea that's it. I'm fully enlightened. I'm not saying that's what you were saying, but let's just say that. Okay, it's like, I'm enlightened. I know, and then start talking as if you do, and then sort of slide back without actually being conscious of actually the reality. So if you've entered into that, okay, let's see how can that be sustained for the next 6 months. And
it's
if it is, let's
always coming back to the present moment and not holding on to any concept, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's the ego that wants to hold on the concepts, or the concepts themselves become quite sticky and trap our minds. Yeah. So without the concepts, it's like, what's actually happening right now? Oh, I'm really suffering right now. That's a reality. What do I need to do? Relax a little bit, or step back a little bit, or direct your attention somewhere else. Just those practical steps help the mind. I'm very pragmatic in my approach. This is a path of freedom from suffering. you get freedom from suffering, not just from peace, but from clarity, like your podcast is named. So that clarity is to do with wisdom. The more we can actually get that peace and clarity simultaneously, the more wisdom there is, and there's freedom from suffering right then and there. So anytime you're suffering, you know you're on the wrong track.
Wow. Yeah, that's very important to notice, because otherwise there might be a notion that it's all right that I'm suffering. That's what leads to progress.
It's good for me. It's, the self-flagellation happens, the whipping of the self, that sort of stuff. It's like, oh yeah, no pain, no gain. That sort of mentality comes in. And it's like, okay, just because perhaps for a lot of your listeners, sometimes in your life you've had challenges and you've learned from it. And so you wouldn't have things happen any other way. Doesn't mean that you deliberately put challenges in front of yourself. And because it doesn't mean it's a fallacy, it's a logical fallacy to think that just because you've learned from difficulties, that you need difficulties to learn.
Yeah.
You can learn through other ways as well.
That's huge.
So let's encourage all these other ways.
Yeah, that's huge. And what did I want to say? Yeah, no, I just love this. It's very fresh. It's very fresh, not having to, intentionally go into suffering unless you really want to. You can just stay aware and focus on, oh yeah, what's happening now? How can I just do what I want to do, etc.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like and there's different, sometimes, I mean, our minds work habitually. So we might habitually go into suffering, or we might habitually avoid suffering. They're both habitual, unconscious habits. Really, the wise way is to be able to be more conscious, more aware of what's happening, and be able to be with suffering if it's there, not have to run away from it, but not have to go straight into it either.
Yeah, right. So it means practically, like if during meditation sit suffering arises, just stay with it, observe it, but don't go into the meditation sit with the intention of going through suffering.
Yeah. I mean, and I noticed in my earlier stages of my practice, I was very much, I was training to be a psychotherapist as well. So, we were always in suffering and in psychological turmoil and trauma and a whole bunch of things. And so the habit was always to go into it. I got to realize at some point that there was actually nothing to complain about. I was looking for little blemishes in my psyche to go into. And it's like, this is probably not the wisdom path. There are times where it's useful, but there are times that it's useful to let that go as well.
Right. All right. And so if we come to the core question, I guess, what is really meditation? What does it mean to be aware? Because you're saying we can be aware of suffering. We can increase our capacity to be aware of anything and stay with it and not run away. So what does it really mean? What is meditation for you?
Okay, two slightly separate questions. I mean, they're related. Meditation's I would say it's to do with an optimal balance of awareness and attention. So awareness is a larger part of it, and attention's a smaller part of it. Sometimes people think meditation is just the attention, but they've missed out what most of this practice is about. Now, this awareness piece is actually the more important part. And so it's being more conscious. So if we think of habits, we're unconsciously following habits. We're like I don't know, it's just a reflex. We're just doing that. You hear people on the streets, and possibly not your listeners, but other people on the streets, you hear them, they triggered me. That's a very common young person phrase I hear. They triggered me. No, you got triggered. You're the one who is triggered. Own it. It's not someone else. Yes, there are certain situations that are triggering, but you are the ones who's triggered. Now, what do you do if you're triggered? That's where the awareness comes in. If there is no awareness, what will happen is if you're triggered, you'll go into the state of being triggered and all the things that happen afterwards. If you're aware that you're triggered, you can also be aware that you can do something about it. You can take a few deeper breaths, redirect the attention, you can calm the system down, you can do a whole bunch of different things at that point, which is positive, beneficial to you and the people around you, as opposed to somewhat feeling triggered by someone, lashing back to them until you find their trigger points and then having that continue. So that's a simple analogy of the importance of awareness. From awareness, one can realize that one has an option to choose to take action in a beneficial way. Without awareness, you're just going to follow the same habits, good or bad, over and over again, mindlessly. The difference between mindless and being mindful.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So that's the awareness part, right? Being
Mm-hmm.
aware of things and being able to choose the right action, as you often say.
Mm-hmm.
And so could we look at the question of what actually is meditation? Because I think there's a lot of confusion there. Is that being aware, or what does it exactly mean?
Yep. So being aware means knowing what's happening. Okay. And so as I said, from that space, you can take action. And then there's that other piece in meditation that's actually also very important, and that's the attentional piece. The stability in attention means a more stability of your mind. So that leads to peace and quiet and calm. That's really important. So you can be aware. So sometimes people are very, very acutely aware of, and they're, let's say, in overwhelm, overstimulated by that. They're very, very aware of what's happening. And they think, I shouldn't be practicing meditation, mindfulness or meditation because I'm so aware. No, they're aware, but without the wisdom. So awareness alone is not enough. You need the wisdom part. So when you're aware with the wisdom, you have that choice of taking right action to help. But the attentional piece is the other way to calm the system. So by placing your attention on an object of choice, you can calm your nervous system. So a very simple primal thing for humans is us sitting around a campfire and just looking at the fire. It's just a really lovely feeling. It's dark outside. That's mesmerizing flames there. It's producing heat, warmth, that's comfortable. And you can just stare at this campfire for hours and hours. It's so easy. What does it do? It calms the system. So when your attention is on something, it calms the system. Ask any person who loves playing video games. They might get really nervous talking to that person, or having to ask that person for a date, or doing all those things. And they go on to the video game and their attention's stuck there and they're calmer. This nervous system calms down. So I'm not saying video games themselves are good or bad. They can be used as an example of how attention, when it's caught there, calms the nervous system. And I guess all the social media scrolling is about that. A lot of anxiety about the world. Bring your attention there is at least calming to a certain extent. The problem is what you're scrolling might not necessarily all be calming.
Right. And is that mostly because you turn away your attention from too many stimuli, bring it just to one place?
Yeah. So that helps. And of course, social media has a different thing because it's trying to pull you in all those different situations. So some things help, sometimes don't. So in meditation, we choose where we want to put our attention. And so we're not relying on some app or some game to keep our attention. We are training our minds so that we can choose to put our attention, and we're training it to stay on something for that same calm and clarity at will. And that's a big difference between meditation and gaming. Um, it is it is literally your choice, which means you can do that at any time. And once you've trained your mind to be able to do that, you can put your attention on anything you choose and have that be used to train your mind. So that combination of that attention to calm the nervous system and the awareness to bring clarity and wisdom is what meditation's about.
Right.
Peace and wisdom.
That's amazing. And there are two parts I want to touch on. The first one is very interesting, maybe for people that are beginning with meditation, is that you can place your attention on anything. It doesn't have to be the breath, it doesn't have to be the flame of a candle or something. It can be just a spot on a wall, pretty much, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It can be the beautiful mountains. You could sit in the mountains. A lot of people love being in the mountains, right? You sit in the mountains. It doesn't even have to be one thing. It can be the whole scenery and the feeling of it, the cool air there, the fresh smells, all that all together. That's where your attention is. Your attention is on the entirety of what's happening in your environment for you right now, the entirety of your experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't even have to be a narrow focus. It can be very wide.
Yeah, right. And that's very interesting, because if your attention or your focus is very wide, then it would seem it is almost like merged with awareness, but there is still some distinction, right? So how does that interplay?
If the mind is well trained in attention and awareness, so if you think about the Mind Illuminated, that book, at the later stages, you are merging them, and where the scope of attention is the entirety of awareness. The problem with people, and people can access that earlier as you've experienced, but if the attention's not trained well enough, it'll collapse, and then they'll have to. They don't have the really obvious path and the easiest path to always access that.
So is that why it is recommended, even in the book, to start with a focus practice as of concentrating on the breath and then adding the awareness? Well, actually, the first step starts with awareness. So
exactly,
what's the recommended path for people to take when they, start on the journey?
Well, the way I do it, the way the book does it, is it starts wide and it doesn't train you that much, and then it brings the attentional piece, and then it goes back wide. It brings the attentional piece big time, and then goes back wide big time.
Yeah.
The way I do it, I keep people wide for a lot longer, and then I bring the attentional piece, and then I see where their aptitude seems to be, and I tend to steer them towards where their natural inclinations are first. And then once that's very well established, then I'll bring the other parts into it. Because I like playing to people's strengths. Yeah,
right. And I would like to stay with this even for one more question, because it's fascinating to me. And I think it explains a lot of questions, and that is that you can, those are two different kind of ways of perceiving the reality, all right? The focused concentration style and the awareness part, and it goes together at the same time, right? So you can play with both, and so you can actually be focused on something and be aware that you are focused on something, right? So
which means they're not two different, which is why they're not two different paths. So the first thing that you said, I don't agree with that, because they're not two different things. They're exactly the same. So when you're able to actually keep the awareness, even if your attention is on something, that's where the magic really happens. If the awareness collapses and the attention's, all the energies on the attention, it hits a brick wall very quickly.
Right.
So even if you've got really good natural attention, it will have its limit. Whereas if the awareness is there, it's almost like there's more energy in the system to go back to further refine that, which further refines the awareness. So you start building them, they snowball, they build on each other. That's stage 7 of the practice.
Yeah. And so as you build this capacity to stay present, what are some of the I would say, juicy or deeper benefits of this practice? What can you start experiencing?
Well, first and foremost, as I keep going back to, your suffering levels have to dramatically reduce. If they are not reducing, you're doing something wrong. And I don't mean just in your seated meditation. I'm talking about your daily life. During your daily life, you will continue to be aware. So you catch yourself as you're engaging in detrimental behaviors or beneficial behaviors. So you are able to continue this practice. So the dichotomy between sitting and daily life is no longer there. They're all the same thing. Seated meditation just helps you in some different ways, and daily life helps you in other ways, and they feed on each other. What was your question?
Yeah, what are some of the benefits, like other benefits that you can start experiencing and feeling?
So first one is your level of suffering. You're very aware of when there's suffering and how to reduce it. And you are automatically able to reduce it. That's the first most important thing. Second, you'll start noticing that the suffering won't exacerbate to the level it used to, because you're able to catch it sooner. And you might even, for a lot of people, they might actually feel like there is no suffering. There's not much at all. There might be something under the surface, but it's just under the surface. Like, otherwise, it's all good. I know how to deal with things. Other things that can happen is because you've trained your attention as well. Doesn't matter what you put your attention on. It could be your work. It could be your learning a new instrument, or learning a new language, whatever. You can put your attention on anything you choose to, and you'll excel at that. With your awareness being strong throughout your day as well, you'll notice a difference in your interpersonal relationships. Firstly, most importantly, your relationship with yourself. You're not going to be harsh on yourself anymore, because there's no way you can train your mind in this way and continue that bad habit of just beating yourself up and being harsh on yourself.
It doesn't work.
So no, it doesn't work. You can't train your mind that way. So you're kinder to yourself. So your new habit is going to be kind to yourself. And guess what? When you're kind to yourself, you end up being kind to the people around you, and they get that benefit too. Yeah. And who knows the snowball effect along there. So there are all these other benefits, and probably dozens more that I'm not thinking of right now.
Yeah, definitely. So does that mean that if we are not experiencing these benefits, we are not feeling more calm, more loving, we're doing something wrong in meditation, or we're just not practicing enough? Or?
It's rarely because people are not practicing enough, or perhaps they're not remembering to practice regularly, or they're thinking, practice means X amount of time on the cushion in the morning, and then after that, anything goes. So that's not practice. Practice is really about remembering so for example, if you set it in yourself that you'd like to be more kind and loving, that's an intention you set at the beginning of the day. Throughout the day, you need to remember throughout the day, am I being kind? Is that being kind to myself? When I call myself stupid, is that being kind to myself? No, probably not. Yes, it was a silly mistake, but okay, forgive yourself and then move on. Learn from it, but move on. And so it's about sticking to the intention. So the practice really is remembering whatever your intentions were.
Right. And that's actually amazing, because my next question was asking about the daily life practice, bringing the sitting practice to daily life and actually merging them. And for me, it's a lot about motivation and dedication, really knowing that this is what I want to do, this is what I want to develop, this is what I want to learn. And then I remember it more often during the day. But if it's just like I wake up and set an intention, see what happens, it doesn't really work that much.
You can't kid yourself. I mean, it's the same mind. It's the same system. You can't kid yourself. And so usually, I don't know if you remember, but the first time I met you, I'm sure I would have spent some time sort of asking, why are you engaging in this practice? Why? It's like, let's get to what really is your personal motivation. And it's not good enough when someone, comes to me and says, I want to be enlightened. It's like, what does that mean to you? It's like, you don't know what it means. So what does it mean to you? What do you really want? And of course, with a little bit more digging, it's always something a lot more personal.
Yeah.
And it has to be personal because it's a personal motivation.
Yeah.
And so once you get that personal motivation, right, okay, that stirs something in you. You'd wake up in the morning to pursue that, not in a forceful way, but it's a reason to be waking up. It's a reason to be going through, trying new things. It's a reason to stick to it, even if it's challenging. We've got that now. Now we can keep that in mind and find a sub goal off that.
Yeah, I remember spending pretty much the whole first session we had on this, and you just kept digging deeper, and I just kept throwing out things. But really, it was only when I said something that really moved me, like I felt it inside. You said, "Oh, that's it." So the right motivation has to move you, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting because that would have been the first time I'd met you, and that's usually the case. It's like I don't know the person in front of me, on the screen in front of me, but when you hit the thing that really motivates you, I feel it, and I see the shift in you, and everything that the synergy is there. It's like, yep, bingo,
click.
Yeah.
It helps me a lot because even in the book, the first phase of the 10 phases is really about just building a regular daily practice and just sticking to it and having motivation pretty much. So it's so important. I never realized it before. Yeah.
Yeah, you won't stick with this. You establish a new habit. Every time you establish a new habit, you know that it takes a certain number of times in a row to be doing it until it's a new habit. How are you going to get those number of times? Well, you have to have the right motivation to get you on the cushion the next day and the next day and the next day. And you need that positive reinforcement to actually congratulate yourself every time you match that, because it's sometimes not good enough to just tick the box. It's like, yeah, well done. I have a student who goes fist pumping, yeah, did it. And it's like, yeah, whatever works for you, but get the whole system involved. It's not just a cognitive process, it's a whole body process.
And this is so wonderful. You stress it so often that when we, notice then that we've been lost in thought or we just skipped a sit or something and we notice it, that's a time to congratulate ourselves and it's opportunity to start again, not really, criticizing ourselves. And it's such a different attitude to what most people would have probably starting with meditation or anything really.
Yeah.
Could you
if you
talk
remember
a bit about that?
Yeah, because if you remember, I said meditation's mainly to do with awareness and there's some attentional component. So when you congratulate yourself, when you notice something, that noticing is awareness. So awareness has kicked up then. You notice that your mind has started wandering. I realize that moment is magic. And if you say, I've been thinking of that, you're missing this opportunity of congratulating the awareness, positively reinforcing the awareness, and in so doing, cultivating it more.
Yeah.
And so that's, it's like once you really get that this practice is about building more, becoming more conscious, building more awareness, then you want to do all you can to savor the awareness when it's there, positively reinforce it when it's there, even if it's a way of some habit that you might not be wanting to do.
Yeah, definitely. It's sometimes, for me, sometimes it's a bit difficult, but it gets easier and easier the longer I'm doing it, knowing that the most important thing is to be aware. It doesn't matter what's happening, just being aware. But it took some time to really get to that, not judging what's happening and saying myself, oh, this practice is really not working that much. I'm aware, but it's not helping,
Yeah. The way I like students starting is being aware of things you can appreciate, because there's a double smiley face there.
Yeah.
Something that you appreciate, you're aware and you appreciate, and it makes you feel better about the awareness. So it's a natural positive feedback loop. So if you set an intention at the start of each day to be aware of at least 3 things to appreciate today, and at the end of the day you reflect on the things that you appreciate most, throughout the day you're always looking out for things to appreciate. So you're looking out, in other words, you're becoming more aware, and things you appreciate, it makes you feel good. And so you've got that positive reinforcement loop that starts off without consciously thinking, I need to be aware, celebrating awareness, and it's too conceptual.
Yeah, so it's like a task that has more benefits than you're aware of, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
You might even not know that you're training awareness, but you're actually doing it.
Yeah. So you may or may not notice that, but I do that a lot when I say try this and that. So frequently there are dual benefits or triple benefits to it, but I'll only emphasize one that the person is able to understand.
It's so funny because, for example, during one mentoring session, I was talking about noticing some mental states of aversion or pride or something, and you said, yeah, great, let's now start noticing what's in between them. What happens when those states are not there? I'm like, okay, that seems interesting. And then during the practice I was like, oh, but that means I have to be aware pretty much all the time.
There you go, tricked you.
Yeah, it's so great.
But then the other thing is, you also can be aware when you haven't been aware. That's a really refined awareness, right?
Yeah. Like in the moment, you notice that you haven't been aware, you are aware.
Yeah.
That's what you mean?
Yeah. So you're waking the system up just really on its own.
Yeah, that's great. And so along the path, as you're becoming more aware, you start noticing these patterns of mind and these tendencies to focus on negativity, etc., etc. Is the only solution to them just being aware of them, or is there something else that you can do to rewrite pretty much those habits that are not serving you?
So the thing is, the awareness does the rewriting, but it has to be awareness at a deep enough level that the rewriting happens. So you're aware of, what was your example? Negativity?
I don't know, maybe you were angry at someone.
Okay, you're aware that you were angry at someone. It's like, yeah, I know I'm angry at someone. So what? It's not a deep enough awareness. It's like, what else do you notice? Did you notice before, perhaps later on as you practice, you might notice that you're starting to get annoyed, starting to get angry, and then the things came out of your mouth. So there's a lot happening before that. At some point, you might notice that you're starting to get angry. You take a few deeper breaths so that it doesn't come out of your mouth, that anger doesn't come out of your mouth. So you're taking action sooner and sooner. At another point, you might, later in the practice, you might notice that you're starting to get a little bit irritated. It's not quite anger yet, but it's just irritated or annoyed. Okay, and you can do something about that. So the awareness, as your awareness deepens, you're able to see it at a subtler and subtler level. And you can take action from there. So that's that at that sort of quite gross and psychological level. But when it comes down to the finer levels of the mind, you're not just aware that some irritation might be there, but you can also be aware of the mind state of aversion. And then we can actually, at a subtler level, stay with the aversion, because all the other things don't matter anymore. They're not the main issue. The aversion's the issue. Then that deeper awareness of the aversion, now the experiment goes at that level. And then you can sort of see that when there's an aversion there, there's not just that person that you're angry at. You're angry at the whole world. In fact, you're annoyed at that, and you're also bored with what's happening. And, that aversion just clouds everything that you're seeing, even things that you like, that cute little puppy is like, whatever. You kind of, that aversion is this lens from which that's filtering your whole existence. then you become interested in that. Oh, okay. So what else is there? Yes, there is more. And then you can actually start being interested in that aversion and its relative forms. And it keeps going on. So when students are ready for it, I'll point them in the direction as to what else to look out for. The problem with general forums like this is I don't want people to go all the way there when actually they should just not say anything at that point when they're really angry. So you need to know what the situation is for you first before you know what the best course of action to take.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Not wanting to jump ahead, I guess. So I'm very curious on the deeper levels of this awareness game, being aware of aversion and deeper levels. Like, is it possible to just like eliminate all suffering? So like you're never gonna suffer because you're so aware, or how does this work?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess going back to the first thing you said, rewriting the programming. So at that subtler level, there's aversion, and you're aware of the aversion. That's not enough because there needs to be a lot more wisdom in that whole process. So now you start looking at the relationship between the aversion and its effects, and the times when there's no aversion and that the effects of that. You start exploring different facets of life, like, if you've got loving kindness, you cannot have aversion at the same time. They just simply don't exist at the same time. I'm really fascinated with certain things. Certain mind states do not coexist with other mind states. Being really interested in all that. And so being really interested, who's being really interested? You can be really interested, but what your interest does is it feeds more data for your awareness. And so the rewriting happens at that deeper unconscious level within that space of awareness. So every time you're aware of that, you're interested, so you feed more data. And it's kind of like the internal system suddenly gets that when you're feeding that aversion, for example, all you're doing is grabbing hold of that hot coal. And it suddenly realizes it. And when it realizes it, it just naturally lets it go. And that is the letting go of the aversion. Because, perhaps at different stage of your life, that anger made you feel powerful. You liked that. And you got what you wanted, even better, because everyone cowered. It's like there were positive things for that. Yeah. So it made sense to hold on to that staff of anger. But then when you finally realize that you were hurting yourself through that, and it's not me telling you, you realize it through your explorations, you instantly let go of it. Yeah. And that's kind of metaphorically what happens under the hood.
Could that be explained with words of like letting go of the payoffs that you're getting from certain actions that are not beneficial? Like releasing the benefits that are not actually good.
So you can do that. You can kind of trick the mind into doing that to a certain extent, but at the deeper levels, the mind needs to see it itself. So you can shortcut the process somewhat, and a lot of coaching techniques will help that. So that's good to a large extent. But the underlying stuff remains. And the underlying stuff needs to it doesn't get done consciously. It's suddenly a sudden realization. That's what an insight is. It's like you didn't figure it out. You didn't even try to do anything. It's like, you're just never going to pick up that cigarette again, or you're just never going to do that thing again, because it's like, you just know at the core of your being that I don't want to do this to myself anymore.
Yeah. So that's the combination of awareness and wisdom, right? Like instant knowing how it is.
Yeah. So that's real insight.
So you can't plan it. I'm going to have an insight today.
No.
Yeah. And so if
you can set the conditions for more insights, and that's what this practice is about.
Yeah. And so is the path that you start realizing these deeper insights, and eventually you just start feeling better and better because there is no aversion to anything? Is that what happens?
It can happen in little stages, but the deeper insights just happen, and then it just takes off a whole chunk of suffering.
Okay.
It just takes off a whole chunk of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's almost like it's working in the background, and the real insights take you to the next level. But then you can have sort of little insights along the way, many little insights along the way, that reduces your suffering as well.
Yeah. Right. The mind would like to make it faster, obviously. Acquire all the insights immediately.
Yeah.
But where would be the fun? Yeah.
Am I hearing no pain, no gain?
No, I mean,
enjoying
what I wanted to say is that it really helps me to focus on enjoying like every session, enjoying every day, not really looking forward too much, That's what I wanted to say.
Be open to the unexpected, but enjoy what's here, because there might be unexpected things within. And you see, the thing about awakening is it's not about the experiences. The experiences can be very ordinary, but it's your perception of the experience that changes. Your perception of your life that differs.
Right. Yeah. It's also interesting for the mind that wants something to happen, right?
Yes, because the mind, especially meditators who've been engaged in this for a long time, they want all these, I don't know, firework experiences, and they think that's it. And so you have a lot of, I have a lot of students who also, okay, let's go for some psychedelic experience so that I can have these experiences, experiences, but not the insight. The insight is about perception.
Right. And so let's go to a question I had at the end of the list is what happens during awakening? Like, is that like a final insight that opens a different perception, or what is that actually?
Yeah, I mean, if we go back to the same analogy, it's like it's just when the system just gets it, this is what this is causing me a lot of suffering, is letting go of that coal, that hot coal. And then it gets it, and it never wants to pick that coal again. For some, like all facets of your mind system gets it. And so it never picks up the stuff that causes you suffering anymore. That's kind of, if you continue with an analogy, that's what it is. What really happens, I don't know.
Yeah, right. Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even know how we are conscious and how that interacts with this, mushy stuff inside this brain, the skull. So it's like the details of that we don't actually know anything about.
But is it possible to describe it maybe with some words experientially, like what changes?
So in the traditional Buddhist way, there are 4 stages of awakening. In the first stage, there are certain things that sort of drop away. You no longer have you don't believe in sort of superstition and rites and rituals and certain things. So there's certain things that kind of just drop away and never becomes, you don't need to twirl 3 times and hop on 1 foot before you sit in order to get that jhana experience. You don't have to do anything like that anymore. You kind of, it's not to say that people don't have rituals for a personal sense of well-being, but there's no superstitious belief that the rituals are what are needed in order for that certain things to happen. So there's certain things like that drop off. In the second path, basically the main things that happen are greed and aversion are significantly reduced. In fact, they can feel like they're so significantly reduced, like they don't exist anymore. They do, but at a very subtle level. But it's so reduced compared to what it used to be that you kind of think, it's pretty much
Is it
gone.
like just flowing with what is, not really wanting to change it? Is
Yeah,
that the
not
feeling?
needing, not feeling like you need to change anything, but you still have, it doesn't mean that you're kind of, oh, someone slaps you in the face, you go, okay, that's fine, let's go on. It's not that. It's more a matter of, you're you're reacting a lot more wisely, more appropriately. It's more a matter of a lovely meditation master once was asked, what should I do if someone's, I think they were in India, someone was trying to steal their umbrella. What should I do? What should I have done in that situation? And I think the master said something like, compassionately hit them with that with that umbrella. You're taking appropriate actions. You're not just saying, yeah, just do whatever you want to with me, but you're not doing it out of malice, out of maybe and maybe it was a cultural thing funny. Where they say compassionately hit you, not really hit, but you're certainly standing your ground. You're not going to be kidnapping me right now, thank you very much. Or you're not going to you're going to stand your ground on things.
I'm going to remember this metaphor. That's amazing.
Don't take it literally. And so in the second path to awakening, that aversion or hatred and greed are significantly lowered. After that becomes quite so the next path, third path, actually is the total elimination of that. So it actually is it requires quite a lot of digging or a lot of things to surface, because it's not that obvious that there is a little bit of contempt there. It's so subtle, or something that you've totally forgotten. It's just stored there, the seed's there, and it'll take whatever circumstances for the seed to start sprouting. And so you need to continue being aware such that you can notice when it sprouts and take appropriate action, rather than inadvertently water it. And so that's the idea of that. Yeah. And once that's totally eliminated, in the fourth path, there's still more work to do. No, it's not work really. It's just what happens is that a few things get lost in the last, that let go in the last bit, and that the main thing that I'd like to highlight is that sense of self, that I am here for myself. That notion of me and you as separate entities ceases to be in an absolute way, and you get to see the numerous levels of interconnectedness we have. And then that's where the fun begins, because you get to see it in all these different ways and test it out in your interactions with people, in your interactions with people who are saying things that you don't like, that you don't believe in, you actually, without malice, but the things that are harmful to other people, but they're still saying that. You get to see them from different lights. You're able to take perspectives in different ways, and possibly I guess the challenge at that point would be to learn how most usefully to communicate with people.
All right. Why is that a challenge?
Because most people are fabulous, and there are some people who are difficult. They are difficult people. And I mean, I don't know. It would be a challenge to speak to a pedophile who is incarcerated but non-repentant. To be able to, I don't know. There are some people who are going to be very challenging to have compassion for them is not actually necessarily difficult, because they're clearly deluded. And so the compassion's not the difficult thing, but to be able to communicate in a way that you could potentially affect them in a beneficial way, I think that would be a challenge. And at that stage, that's kind of the natural inclination, because you see it's just a different facet of you, like you could have been that.
So there's a natural tendency to want to uplift people somehow. Is that right?
Or not even uplift, but just to be able to, in some way, sow a couple of seeds that might grow at some time in the future. Or that, it's like there's no hurry in that. You understand that you are not able to do that much. You're just one person, but it's like, anyone I come across, I'd like to actually have some sort of potential impact. And again, not in an egoist way, but in a just because you're me. You're me at a different stage of my development.
Wow.
So it becomes really, really fascinating and interesting, but the whole journey is fascinating. But right from the start, from before stream entry, before first path of awakening, just noticing that some actions you take cause suffering and some actions cause less suffering. At least start with that awareness. And if we're all inclining towards less suffering, or we could say more well-being, that's a good start. And then wherever you are, there are different sort of things that you can explore in a finer level.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for this description, or how to say it. Preview of this path. Like we came across all the questions that I wanted to ask, but I'm curious if there's anything else you wanted to add that you feel is important, some final piece to the puzzle, whatever.
I think just now we talked about attention and awareness, and we talked about attention. I gave the idea of the flame or the campfire, and we talked about the breath. It could be anything. A place to place the attention that is actually universally beneficial is the feeling of well-being, feeling of loving kindness. So we have that sense of, if that you might want to place your attention on something and you don't like the breath or you don't like anything, try loving kindness. And it's like, just be aware, keep the awareness there with your attention on your, let's say, your chest area, the warmth, the feeling of, may I be well, may my loved ones be well. Bring your loved ones into your heart center. May my dog be well, be my cat be well, whatever, just bring them, the various different members of your loved ones, into that center and feel that sense of loving kindness there, and be aware of how that makes you feel when your attention is there and your awareness is how it makes you feel. Just tying that to the third path of awakening that I just talked about, at that point, everything is love. Because there's no aversion and no greed. So you just absolutely love absolutely everyone, so unconditionally, which is why in fourth path, that lack of ill will for other people is so thoroughly gone. But then you're exploring things in a different level. It's not at the level of love, but at that third path, it's just pure love.
Yeah. And that can be trained. You're saying that can be trained, right? So you can do that by...
that can be accessed right at the start, even before the first path.
Yeah.
Even momentarily. So it's like you get access to this other realm almost through this lovely practice. And it's a really lovely practice. And the other thing is I used to teach in the evenings, and I used to always finish my guided meditations with a metta, a loving kindness meditation at the end. And it is said that practicing metta, loving kindness, at the end of each day before going to sleep gives you good dreams. So
that's motivating.
It sort of just calms the nervous system down through the attention, And the object of attention is really nice too. And then the awareness of that. So the whole combination is a really, really good practice.
So if there are any open loops that open up during the day, any emotions, you can kind of tie it back with a meta practice before sleep.
That's right. Or anything that comes up, just wrap it in loving kindness, saying, yeah, I'll tend to you at another time, but I'm going to sleep now. I'll wrap this one up in loving kindness, with a nice bow.
Yeah, you can even visualize it, right? Like doing that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's
absolutely.
Amazing.
Feel it. Visualize it if you want to, but really feel it, and feel the intention of that, sincere intention for well-being for yourself and others.
And that brings me to maybe a final piece. What would you suggest to people that find it hard to feel compassionate towards themselves? They can be loving to others, but it's hard with themselves.
Yeah. Give me a specific example of a person or a specific situation.
So let's say there are, there are people that love their family, love their animals, whatever, and anything. But maybe there is some guilt in themselves. They don't accept themselves fully. They don't find themselves that loving. And when they direct that loving kindness towards themselves, there's resistance because I don't deserve it, maybe.
Okay. So in those cases, think of your family, think of your pets, think of your plants, whatever you naturally find, have goodwill towards, and bring that into your heart space and stay with that. And then after some time, when you really feel it in your system, expand that to may all beings be well. And then just see if you can, and keep those people, those close people there, very much so, and just add the sort of phrase, may all beings be well. And then keep that as your practice. And when you finish your practice, remember that you're part of all beings. You've just given yourself love. You're not thinking of yourself specifically, but just keep that in mind. It's like, you can do that. And it's okay. So, and if there's another practice to engage in, it would be forgiveness practice. I forgive myself for not knowing better. And that forgiveness practice can sometimes be a really useful precursor to a loving kindness practice, if that's hard for people. I forgive myself for not knowing better. Not for anything else, but just not knowing better, not knowing how to love.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. I think it's a wonderful place to, end the interview. If you want, you can, of course, maybe mention your work. People can, buy your book or join the program or whatever. And then we can finish.
Sure. My book is I assume you'll have my name on your website, Leanne
I'll
Tang.
add links and everything.
Yeah. So I've got a website called freeingourmind.com, and I've got a book that's called Get Off Your Cushion, Weaving Meditation into the Fabric of Life. It's a really, there you go. It looks like that, and it's a really thin book. I have to emphasize this to people because sometimes people say, oh, I can't read that. It's really thin, and if you don't want to read the whole 100 pages, just read the first half. That will set you on a path that will benefit your life. And that's really the reason why I wrote it.
Yeah, I read it and I recommend it. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time and kindness and everything. Yeah, really enjoy this meditation guidance that I'm going through. It's amazing. Yeah.
Lovely to talk to you again.
Yeah. So greetings to Western Australia, is it?
Yes.
And have a great rest of the day.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.